This lecture video is going to look at some of the characteristics, just general characteristics of blood. So first of all, we need to talk about the parts that make up blood. And this is just a general overview. We're going to get very specific about each one of these parts. But blood is divided into two different components, the plasma and then the formed elements. The formed elements are the living cells, so that's going to include the platelets, the leukocytes, the erythrocytes. So erythrocytes stands for red blood cells, leukocyte stands for white blood cells. So the formed elements are the living cells. The plasma is the fluid that those cells float around in. So remember, blood is a connective tissue, so it's got cellular components, that's the formed elements, and then it has extracellular matrix or extracellular components, and that in this case is the plasma. The plasma is going to be made up of amino acids, nutrients, proteins, gases, electrolytes, nitrogenous waste, those types of things. And then again, they're going to hold, the plasma will hold those different formed elements. Now, some general characteristics of blood outside of its components are going to be that blood is bright red if it's oxygenated. This has to do with the hemoglobin protein, which is going to pick up and carry oxygen. So when it is fully saturated with oxygen, it gives blood a very bright red color. Deoxygenated blood becomes darker shades of red based on how saturated that hemoglobin is. So as the hemoglobin drops off oxygen, it becomes darker and darker and darker. Regardless, people look at veins and they say, oh, veins are blue. Well, they're not really blue. The blood flowing through them is not blue either. It's just a really, really dark red versus the bright red in oxygenated blood. Blood is sticky, and that's because of the formed elements and the proteins that are in it. It's also very viscous, so it's 5 times thicker than water. So viscosity really refers to the thickness of a fluid. And blood's viscosity is important because it's going to impact how blood flows, and it's going to impact blood pressure. So obviously blood is going to flow, because it's so much thicker than water, slower than water is. Temperature-wise, blood is slightly higher than body temperature. It's 104 degrees Fahrenheit versus our body temperature, which is about 98.6. And this is just because of the friction involved in the blood flowing through our veins. It's going to produce, there's some friction as it rubs up against those vessels, and that produces a little bit of heat. pH is slightly alkaline or slightly basic at 7.35 to 7.45, and that's mostly due to the proteins that are in there. The proteins that are in blood are really important because they're going to serve as a buffer to prevent major changes in pH in our bodies. We do not want it to go lower than 7.35. We do not want it to go higher. And so the blood's going to play a really important role in acting as a buffer from drastic pH changes in the body. And then it makes about 8% of our body weight. So in a male, that's roughly 5.6 liters, and in a female, it's roughly 4.5 liters.